Okay, great. I will do it in English because we have some people that are not Flemish to talk or speak. Great to see you all here after 2 years, after sitting after the screen. It's good to be together again, together in one place to talk about the Power platform. So I will welcome you first here in Ghent, and thanks to Roborana to hosting this event today in this nice place. And we will introduce a little bit the Power Addicts and how that you can support us. So we have already some sponsors and that would like to thank and to help us grow in this coming years. So thank you very much. During this event today, I would like to give some guidelines and be aware of others, be friendly and patient, be welcoming and respectful, be open to all questions and viewpoints, and be understanding of difference, and be kind and considerate to others. Some guidelines that the community gives us that we would like to also give to the community here in Belgium. Who is the Belgian Power Addicts in Belgium? So we are currently with three. That's Clifton and Tim that joined us recently, and I am Frederik. So if you have questions about the Power Addicts here in Belgium, you can reach to us. You can also follow us on the poweraddicts.be. And you can find also some links. We have also a WhatsApp channel. WhatsApp channel where you can communicate directly with us. So if you have questions, ideas, post them there. And you can also join the Belgian Power Addicts via the Microsoft community. And also, we are searching for people that would like to help us. So if you have ideas to organize an event or to help us to organize something, please come to us. Do you have ideas? Do you want to have? Do you have a presentation or helping to build a user group? You're welcome. So thank you. We have also some stickers prepared. We would like to, there are still some over there. Share them with your colleagues, customers and friends, and post a location where you put the sticker on Twitter and LinkedIn and use the hashtag PowerAddicts. And now I would like to present our speakers, Lorenz Verheyden and Fabrice Kwetchet. Yes. Okay. It's all yours, Lorenz. Yeah, I forgot to tell you that if you drink something and you have empty bottles, you can put them in the yellow Jupiler boxes. And the toilet is behind the closet here. And if you leave the event today, I have free parking tickets. So come to me, I have the parking tickets, so I can give you one, so you can go out for free.
Are they valid the whole day?
I think they are valid until this midnight, so before midnight. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for coming to the POWERTALK meetup. It's great to see everyone here. It's a lot of people, and thank you to the organizers for letting us organize this event for them. So it's the first time that they had a physical meetup in 2 years since Corona. So it's great to see everyone here, and I hope you have an interesting time and that you learn a lot. Also, thank you for the sponsors of the POWERTALK, so that they could make this happen. Who am I? Well, my name is Lorenz. I'm going to talk to you today about 2 small topics. So instead of giving 1 big talk, I'm going to give 2 20-minute presentations, one on adaptive case management in the Power Platform, and one that fits closely to what Fabrice is going to talk about, I presume, is extending the Power Platform with Azure services. I'm the managing partner of Robust. Robust is a collaboration between Roborana and NUST, 2 competence centers within the Kronos group, where Roborana focuses more on low-code automation, and NUST is a .NET powerhouse. So we bring best of both worlds with both low-code and custom development. We currently have 13 employees in our team. We started about a year ago, so we're really growing fast, and we hope to end the year with even more people, because we really see that there is a lot of that demand in the market for Power Apps and Power Platform solutions in general. I'm going to start first with my talk on adaptive case management, but before we get into that, I think we need to take a little bit of a step back from where automation really started. Here you see like this, where it all started in the production line, in the factory of Ford General Motors, where they really started the trend of automation, where people had their own position and they used to do one part of the assembly, and then it would the car would go to the next one until the car is actually assembled. If we take a look at Ford's assembly line today, you can see that it's fully automated and there's almost no people there anymore except for robots who are doing all the work. If you take a look in the same timeline for the office work, you see this is how it looked, this is how they used to work. Everyone used to have their own desk and they used to pass the papers from one desk to the next one. And if you then take a look at how we are working today, you see that a lot of data has been digitized, but in a lot of companies nowadays still there hasn't been a lot of change in the way that we're working. So we still have a lot of companies that, even though the data is digital, they're still sending files everywhere. A lot of data is passed in Excel files. We even have customers where we go, where people print out the papers, they pass it from the next desk to the other one. So really not much has changed in that time. So when we see that the production line has been fully automated nowadays, and we are still doing so much manual work on actually administrative processes, we see that the technology has advanced, but the way that we're working really has stayed quite the same in a lot of companies. So we have embraced technology with computers, but we're still working very inefficiently with a lot of Excel files, documents, and just sending over data to one another, but there's a lot of lack of an overview of what needs to be done, an application or a solution that can track the work that has to be done, and to make sure that everyone gets the right information at the right time. So that's where case management or adaptive case management comes in. I find that this is a very good definition. So the ability to monitor, update, understand, and interpret every piece of work as it's processed, providing a smarter, more integrated way to handle increasing complex workloads. Basically, my definition of case management, and we can argue about this a lot after this talk, is just making sure that we can keep track of the work that needs to be done, make sure that the right people get involved in the process at the right time, and that we provide them the necessary tools that they need, or the tool set that they need to handle their casework, all of the work that needs to be done in one smart solution that can also handle processes that are not very straightforward or that can evolve. So, in the way that I look at it is that an adaptive case management system is just empowering the people that are now doing administrative processes, making sure they have the right tools to handle these cases, and they can work more efficiently, with more transparency. They can have an overview of what needs to be done, and with the right reporting tools that they need to finish it. And, well, I think we're all working with the Power Platform, otherwise we wouldn't be here today. We can see that actually we have all the necessary tools in this toolbox that we need to create this kind of system to make sure that everyone gets involved in the right moment. We have the Power Apps that can provide us an application, kind of a presentation layer for these people to work with the Power Automate in the background that is handling these processes. They're doing the personal workflows. We have the analytics that we need, and AI, Dataverse, everything we need to actually create these kind of processes is in the Power Toolbox, or the Power Platform Toolbox as we know it today. And it's only getting bigger and expanding, and we can see that every update we're getting closer and closer to a full toolbox that can encapsulate really end-to-end processes. One core solution that we have in all of the next examples that I will show you in a few slides is that we have the power of the Dataverse. You're all familiar probably with the Dataverse. I hope you all use it in your own solutions. I think the Dataverse is very revolutionary in the way that it has broken down the silos between different departments, where everything used to have its own database, everything was stored separately. People would have to develop integrations for data to be shared, which is a lot of effort, a lot of time investment, and also a lot of money. That if we take a good setup of the Dataverse, and if we really think about how we set up these environments, how they have to talk to each other, sorry. So today we're gonna, after these slides, I'm gonna show you some examples of some processes that we tackled. I'm gonna talk specifically about the Power Platform. Of course, we also have the common data model in Dynamics, where we can use the power of the account table, the activity table, contacts, and so on. We can have a whole discussion on how we use that, for example, the customer engagement. In this talk, I'm going to show you more use cases for more internal systems, so within the own organization, where Dynamics is mostly meant for like customer engagement, like sales and marketing, customer service, field service. Can give a whole talk on this, but I'll focus just really on the Power Platform in this talk. That's all I'm going to give you on theory. I think you all know the platform well enough to be here, otherwise you wouldn't have joined. So I'm just going to go and fly into some use cases that we have currently in production and are being used as we speak. Due to some NDAs, I cannot actually show you a lot of the applications, so I'm going to have to show you with some process charts to show you how the process works. I'm very sorry for that, but our NDAs are legally binding. The first use case I want to talk about, because it's a quite linear process, is one that we automated for one of our customers. Well, the case was actually, we have a very big corporation, an enterprise, where a lot of people can request assistance from their legal department to draft a contract. So for example, you need a new PO placed for a vendor that doesn't exist, or anything else, you would have to, or in the old situation, you would have to send an email to legal. You would have to tell them and explain to them like, okay, I have this contract that needs to be created. These are the parameters. It would be a lot of back and forth email traffic, something you probably see a lot, before they could actually determine whether legal assistance was needed or not. So we automated the system with a Power App and in the background Power Automate. I want to start with this case because you can see the process is quite clear. It doesn't actually loop back. It's a very linear system where actually anyone in the organization can start a request for a contract. They are taken through a wizard in a Power App where we ask certain questions to determine whether there is any involvement from the legal department or not. And through that wizard, we guide them to the right place they have to be. So in this case, there was already 2 existing systems that we interacted with. Was that for the master data team, there was already a process in place to request new vendors in an SAP system. So they were using a SharePoint form to enter some data about the vendor, they would get a notification, and a team would manually go in and create that vendor in their SAP system. And on the other side, legal already had a SharePoint list that they used as a database. Whether that's the right solution or not, we can argue about it. Where they kept track of all the contracts, all of the files, and all of the metadata related to that. So we created for them an end-to-end solution where any user can request a contract through the wizard, and through that wizard, actually there are some steps where if the vendor doesn't exist yet, we interact with the SAP system to go and create that vendor for them if we check. If we can see that the vendor doesn't exist yet. So we're actually following the same process that was done manually, and we automated it through their APIs. So that's the separate branch here. And then actually, the user would not see this running in the background. So they are not blocked when they create a request. They are like, okay, they look for a vendor. I cannot find Roborana, for example. They say, okay, here is the information from my vendor. They enter it, they're like, okay, next. They don't see that the process is running in the background. And in the same time, they are just filling in a form, they fill in all the information. And in the end, the legal department has their own view of that application where they can see everything, they can handle all the process on their end, and in the end, they get a contract that is generated for them based on the parameters. So this is one of the simplest flows that you can imagine in a case management system, because there's not a lot of exceptions, it's quite linear. Another process that we did that's a little bit more branches, or actually more kind of users that are interacting with the system, is for one of our pharma customers that they had a change control system that looks like it was built in the 90s, to be honest. It looked quite horrible. They were like, we need some new technology on this, and we need to modernize these screens for our users. So this is the process that they followed. So they have a pharma product on the market, and during the life cycle of that product, there are complaints coming in. These complaints are captured in a different system, but when they see a trend in these complaints, they have to start the investigation of a change control. So basically to check, can we find the root cause of this? And if we can we actually adapt the product to make sure that it doesn't happen again? It's not a much more complex system than the last one, but you can see here, I hope it's readable all the way in the back, that there's a lot more kind of users involved. So like in the last use case, any user can request a change, but depending on the kind of change that is requested, the kind of products that are locked, they have to be sent to the right teams. So for example, if it's a quality problem, the quality team has to be involved. If it's a manufacturing problem, the product team has to be involved. So all of these people, now when a change is being logged on their department, they're getting a notification that we have this new request for you. They go into the application, they check out all of the information. So all of the information based on that change control is kept together into our solution, and then they choose the action that they want to take. You can see here that the solution itself, or the process behind it, is quite simple, but just the fact that now they don't have to go from the monitoring system to their old system. There were some other systems that we replaced as well. It's all captured together is what really creates an environment where these users, they have everything they need to make a decision so that the process keeps moving. Well, you can see here as well, there is a lot of approvals, which we took care of with Power Automate, of course. But the more focus here is also because we use a Power Platform, we can interact with Active Directory, that we can find these teams, find the right people, and make sure everyone who needs to be involved, or has to be kept in the loop, is involved in the right stage of the process. They get notifications, they get an overview, and they can make an informed decision instead of emailing back and forth going into multiple systems. The next one that I have is a little bit more complex process. So these were just two simple examples. I don't know if it's readable on the projection. I don't really think so. It's one of our government, yeah, sorry if it's unreadable. On my laptop it's readable. But basically we have a government agency. It works on my machine, that's always works. I will guide you through the process. Basically, high level, all you need to know is we have a government institute that works together with a lot of subcontractors. They ask certain services. I will give translation, for example, translation of legal documents. It goes much further than that. There's a lot of categories. They ask their services, and how the process runs now is that they send over invoices for those services through email. It's all in one big email box. People go into that email box depending on their jurisdiction. They pick out the right ones. They download those attachments. They process them. They have to follow up the payment currently manually in an Excel file. They have no idea how many cases they have, how many unpaid invoices they have. They are paying fines on everything. It's just a process that, even with the best will of the world, can never work like this. It's not scalable, and they're having a more increasing backlog every year. If I'm not mistaken, before we implemented this, I think there were like 15,000 unpaid or unchecked invoices in this mailbox, and it was growing every month. Yeah, that's where our tax money goes, sadly. So we came in. The rest of the process is also approval flows. I'm not going to go really deep into it, but you can see here that the process gets quite complex. We have the external party that sends over their data. There are some internal processes that have to run, make sure that everyone is involved. So it's first someone who picks it up from the administration, has to go to the accounting department, has to be paid, has to be followed up. That's basically the last part of it. And the worst thing is actually this is the high-level process. This is as clear as we could actually draw it out. Every step in this process has another subflow behind it. So you can imagine that if you would want to put this in a real process flow, it's really a mess the way that they're working now. Here I can show you some examples. I had to redact some information. So what did we do? For these external people, we create actually a Power Apps portal where they can hand in their invoices in other documents. There's, I think, 4 or 5 documents they have to upload in order to process these payments. And then they can follow up the status on that. They get comments back. You made a calculation mistake on this, or this doesn't work out. And basically they're getting continuous feedback. On the internal side of things, we gave them a Canvas application that they can also use to send it to the right people, to get notifications, and finally get a clear overview of the work they still have to do, which is what they were missing nowadays. So, I have to redact some information. You have to trust me, this is a Power Apps portal, but since the header is very indicative of which government agency it is, I had to remove it. But basically we create a web page for them where you can see that, for example, this person has multiple entries in there, has different statuses, so depending on the status, the screen will change for the user. They get a field there which displays comments, and so they can really handle it from their end. And the internal side, well, this is just the overview, but they have the Power App to follow up everything and to keep the process moving, so they can have both the administrative people working on this, the finance people. Everything has been taken care of end to end in one single solution with a lot of different components. Also in the backend, a lot of Azure stuff, but that's for my next one. And you can see really that even small processes are a good use case for the Power Platform, but we can also really tackle huge complicated processes like the one I showed you here, this is just the top level, that the Power Platform has everything that we need, even nowadays, to process. And we can capture that in one single solution, and we can make sure everyone has an overview and is being kept in the loop in this whole process. It was a little bit of the showcase of what we're doing right now, what we have now in production for our customers. Maybe before I go to the Azure part, I don't know if there are any questions. I'm going to do this after every small talk so that we don't have to wait until the end. I don't know if anyone has any questions on this.
Your first 2 case management examples? Were they model-driven or canvas based?
Those were canvas apps, purely for the reason that the customer wanted a very customized user experience. I think that we all know that model-driven is very strong when you work data-driven, but it's generally the user experience requirement that makes you go to canvas apps. Maybe now with custom pages it could be fixed a little bit, but when we started it was still in preview. It was a bit too risky to actually put it in production like that. Any more questions, remarks? No? Okay. Then I'll jump straight into the part about Azure. I'll also give a quick introduction to that. If we take a look at the Power Platform maturity model, this is also the one that I copied from Microsoft, all truth be told, but I gave it a little bit of a nicer presentation. I think we've all been through this in our own development of Power Platform, or I assume maybe you are developers that started Power Platform. The more you go up in maturity, both in your organization and as a developer, you start noticing that you need different components where you're starting to run into limitations of the Power Platform. In your first steps, let's say you're making proof of concept, it's your data source is probably SharePoint, it's an Excel, and the more you move up, you start using more advanced technology behind it. So let's say in the repeatable, you start to learn that something like component libraries exist, or actually just components in Canvas apps or whatever. You start using the Dataverse, then you start to standardize your processes, and in the end you work your way up until you have a center of excellence. When you start off, it's very nice to start off simple. You know, we think we all started very simple when we start with the Power Platform. It's easy to connect a SharePoint list, it's easy to use an Excel file. But when you go up in this maturity, you start noticing things that maybe you're missing or you're running into a wall with the platform. Well, really, that maturity model is like going from the traditional platform into the Azure services. Maybe some of you went the other way around, but I'm going to follow the maturity model a little bit. So, for example, you start noticing that your Power Automate flow gets really slow, or it just cannot handle the amount of cases you're trying to run through it. You start noticing that the flow that you're running starts to take minutes instead of seconds, depending on the caseload that you put through it. And you start to investigate a little bit more on Azure services. So basically going from the low code to the pro code, or a combination of both. You know, we also have citizen developers. It's okay to stay at the top. But you notice when you really want to tackle, for example, that last process that I showed you, the really complicated one, there's just some tools that we need that are currently not available in the Power Platform. So you start need to using things like Azure functions when you need like some code to run a calculation really quick. You need API management when you, for example, you want to start exposing your solution like a Dataverse API to other services, or maybe you want to ingest other services. Logic apps if you want to run system integration workflows, or workflows that have to run on a system or organization level. And there's all other kinds of wonderful things, but in our experience so far, we see API management functions and logic apps are really the core services that we use, and, or in my experience, the rest is a little bit more situational, but I think that those three are really much more core Azure services that you can use in your own solutions. I think when we go through that maturity level, like I showed you, is, or maybe it's for us or for myself, was the first thing that I ran upon is like, first you want to make everything in Power Automate. You're finding a way to make it work. You're trying to force yourself or that flow to work, to run, and to run quickly, efficiently. But you notice that at some point you're hitting a wall. And we can see that Power Automate is a very powerful tool that it can be really used more for personal workflows, for smaller workflows, even though we can use more like a service principal, service accounts to run them. But it also has a lot of limitations based on the licenses. You have your API limits depending on the license that the account has. So for example, if you have to process 10 million records for some kind of integration, You just cannot build it the way you want to. You can find a lot of workarounds, but in the end you're going to get stuck, basically because the platform doesn't allow you to go further than that. So then you wander into the wonderful world of Azure, where you start to learn that logic apps exist. It says that it's a little bit more for pro developers, but for the people who've worked with logic apps will know that the experience in developing them is very similar. If you know Power Automate, you will get a hang of logic apps very fast. And we can see that the use cases are also a little bit different for both of them. Where Power Automate is more of a personal workflow or smaller workflows, logic apps are really built to orchestrate these end-to-end processes between organizations, between tenants, between applications, really much bigger scale than what we can handle with Power Automate. Also useful to know, managed identities exist in Power Automate, very useful tool to also make sure that everything stays secure. Where with Power Automate, your service principal, service account, it's maybe not always the way to go if you want to keep everything secure and closed. Then this Power Automate flows, you start to look at logic apps, and at some point you think like, why don't I write a function for this? It's another alternative of logic apps, and so instead of using a low-code tool of development, like in Power Automate, logic apps, same designer experience, you're thinking, okay, I can write .NET code, why don't I write just a function to do that? It's always a very tempting alternative, but there are still some differences in them that logic apps use more set of predefined triggers, where in functions you really have to code your own functions, and it goes a little bit against the mantra of low code. There are definitely use cases for them, which I will show after this slide. I will actually show you some use cases that we did. And logic apps has the added benefit of being able to connect the different data sources out of the box. Microsoft and the community, or you yourself with a custom connector, can really write powerful integrations without having to know how to code. So the functions is really more on that pro code side of things, where a logic app is something that even a citizen developer can learn how to use, and is a tool that is available for everyone, especially if you have some Power Automate knowledge. The last one I'm going to talk about really quick is for the API management. For those of you who didn't know already, you can consume external APIs through your API management and actually generate a custom connector through that. Also, you can connect your logic apps, your function apps into API management and actually consume them like that, which is a really powerful tool instead of always having to write your own custom connector. Just a quick note on that, but I'm just going to go into some use cases to really show you what we've done with that, how we can implement this, and why we couldn't have done this just in the traditional Power Platform tools that we have. So here's an example of a setup that we did for a customer. Maybe a little bit unclear, but basically on the top we have our Power Platform solution as we know it. We have a Canvas app in this case, Dataverse and Power Automate. That is mostly done in the user context. And on the Azure side, we had a couple of integrations that we had to deal with. We had two SFTP servers. Yes, SFTP, that's also government agencies, they love their SFTP servers, that we had to monitor for incoming files. Basically, we had to create a connection to an external system through SFTP because they weren't able to provide APIs. You can go in on the details on that, but it's a very long story. Instead of actually allowing us or to create an API, they said, okay, no, we're just going to create a dump of the data with few million records at a time that you have to pick up and you have to ingest, put it all in Dataverse, and then we have to display it to the user. So, don't know exactly what the API limits are nowadays. I think like 30,000, 50,000 for a user license, if I'm not mistaken. What we have on the left-hand side, an SFTP server where about 1 million records a day are being dumped. There's no way we can ingest all of that into our Dataverse in Power Automate. Even with the best will of the world, we can try. In the beginning, we did try, but we really ran the limit. So that's where we've used a logic app to actually keep track of that SFTP server to monitor for any incoming files. And we are then using different Azure functions to debadge those files, making sure that that we get them all correctly. We can reprocess them if one of them fails, and we're sending that back straight into the Dataverse. I'll actually show you how that ingestion works in a second. And also, when we have to expose our own services from the Dataverse to two other external parties, one of them you will know if you ever speed in your car. You will probably know the letter that arrives with a QR code, similar website to that. Well, we're using app services to expose those APIs also because we don't want, well, we have different kind of consumers on those ends. We want to make sure that it's secure. We only expose the data that that kind of identity is allowed to consume. So we can really funnel, or we can limit what they can see, and only certain access rights are given based on who is actually calling that endpoint. So this is the flow that we're currently using in production on that huge CSV file, 1 million records roughly a day that is being dumped. So we have a logic app that is actually monitoring that SFTP server for incoming files, and we are consuming all of those files into a